Hey there, A's Day fans. Welcome to our Monday edition, our newest episode talking everything athletics. I'm your host, Joe Grado. Want to thank you for taking part of your Monday to spend it with us and listen to what I have to say. Happy St. Patrick's Day, everyone. Today is Monday, March 17th. We are only 10 days away from opening day. Couldn't be more excited about baseball being so close to being back. We're talking, as mentioned, everything A's as we prep for the official return of baseball. Today, we are having an interesting discussion on our belief on, and just making a case, a hypothetical case, on why Lawrence Butler, right fielder number 4 for your Athletics, could make a case to win the 2025 AL MVP. And we did hear earlier this morning that it was the best unkept secret that the Athletics officially named right-handed pitcher Luis Severino the opening day starter for the Athletics when they kick off the 2025 season up in Seattle to take on the Mariners in a 4-game season on Thursday, March 27th. So very excited. Baseball's right around the corner. Let's talk about why Lawrence Butler could win the MVP. Thank you so much again for taking part of your Monday to be with us. We are back, and like I mentioned at the top of the show, baseball is almost officially back. I know we've been in the full swing of the spring training season in the Cactus League, seeing a lot of promise as the game earlier today. Jacob Wilson hit 2 homers and drove in 5 runs. Just wanted to give him a quick shout out. That's definitely pays a testament to his off-season training to add some strength, and it's a clear example of how it's showing direct correlation to performance and production on the field. So just wanted to give him a quick shout out. Really cool to see that, and hope he keeps it going, is able to translate it to the 2025 regular season. But definitely a lot of promise there. But that's not what we're talking about today. We are making our case as to why there could be another American League MVP candidate in the form of right fielder Lawrence Butler. But before we do, we want to give you a little bit of direction on where you can find us. So first, on our social media channels, on our Instagram page at A's Day Baseball Podcast, on X, formerly known as Twitter, at A's Day Podcast, our YouTube channel for all of our video content at A's Day Podcast, and for those that have been there since day one, all new and future A's Day fans, please be sure to check out our Patreon site to become an official subscriber. For just $2 a month, you'll be entered to win monthly A's Day t-shirts, future A's ticket giveaways, A's autograph memorabilia, and so much more as we are able to grow this platform. That is patreon.com/A's Day. We'll be very happy to get to know each one of our subscribers, and you'll be glad you did. All right. Let's get to our topic at hand today. Let's talk about Lawrence Butler. And we actually already released his A's player profile and prediction. So if you haven't had a chance to listen to that, check us out on your favorite podcast platform. We're probably going to be on there. We're definitely on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, iHeartRadio, so many other channels. So pick your favorite one. we've been doing A's player profile and predictions, one episode a day all the way up until opening day, which will culminate with a overall team preview, and that is when you will hear our official prediction on how we think the 2025 season is going to shape out. Kind of want to discuss what the roster, at least the opening day roster, is going to look like, but that'll be for a future episode. It will be in 10 days, so very excited to talk about that then. But back to Lawrence Butler, we are going to talk about what he did last year. To give you a little bit, again, if you've listened to the A's player profile prediction, you have a pretty good foundation understanding of who Lawrence Butler is and kind of what his expectations are for 2025 and beyond. But if not, this will be a good little refresher if you're just tuning in. Always happy to talk about great ball players. In 2024, he batted .262 with 22 home runs, 57 RBIs in 125 games. But that doesn't, in no shape or form, tells the story of his season. And by that, it looks like, had a pretty good year, some good power, some good runs batted in. In today's standard in terms of batting average, he's significantly above the league average, which I believe was 240 or 241. I'd have to look back at that to confirm, but somewhere in that area. Might have even been in the high 230s. Anyway, at the beginning of last season, Butler kind of struggled in the first 2 months, and eventually they decided to send him down to AAA so that he can kind of shore up his approach and fine-tune his mechanics a little bit. Just kind of give him a little respite. Sometimes a young player, when they're getting the first full taste of Major League Baseball, it could be a little overwhelming at times, and he might be trying to do too much, whatever the case may be. So really important for him to. I thought it was really smart, but the A's coaching staff and player operations to hey, let's just take a step back, kind of go back to the basics and see how we can get you back on track. Well, that was certainly a great move on their part for Butler and the A's for sure. He came back in June, and his real takeoff was in July, and I can tell it seemed like he came back motivated, determined, more confident, but definitely really soaked up whatever was being shown to him in AAA, because he definitely cut down on the swings. His approach was a lot simpler, and he was just attacking. He wasn't caught in between like on certain pitches earlier in the season, because he does tend to, at times, to struggle with the off speed, but he really was just hunting higher velocity fastballs early in the count and not missing them, and laying off some of those borderline off speed pitches at the back end of the year, and you can see how it translated to so much success, especially in the second half of the year. And speaking of that July takeoff, let me just share what he did in just 22 games, okay? 363 batting average, 408 on base, 802 slug. 10 home runs, that's right, I said 10 home runs in 22 games. He won 2 AL Player of the Week awards. And with that production, that's a sizzling month. And I know that's hard to keep up over the course of 162, but that certainly was a significant piece in when the A's started taking off in the second half too, because a lot of that, I know he was starting to heat up a little bit before the All-Star break, but a lot of that came in the back half. So and that's when the A's seemed to really take off too, as they played 500 ball over the last 70 games. And that final line that I was talking about, it's 30% than league average. So even with the slow start, he was over to overcome that hurdle, came back with a man and a mission, and the rest is history. And now we're seeing who he could really be, and he's being rewarded for that potential too as well. What he showed in that second half, they see him being a superstar. So he signed a 7-year, $65.5 million extension as confirmation he will be one of the pillars of the A's in this current and future era during their time now in Sacramento, and then their eventual move to Las Vegas. He is going to be one of the cornerstones of this team moving forward, along with Brent Rooker, who they also gave a 5-year contract extension to as well. So those are going to be 2 core offensive pieces, and really excited to see what these two do to show how much they live up to these contracts and be positive influences on and off the field within this lineup. So excited. At the beginning of the offseason, I thought those were 2 extension candidates, and I'm glad they got it done. I'd say there's another couple options, but I thought those would be the two, if they were going to talk contract extensions, that they would have done before the season started. So glad they were able to get that done, and congrats Lawrence Butler to getting that payday. That's very awesome, and best of luck this season coming up. So let's transition, and I want to actually get into our case as to why we believe Lawrence Butler could win the MVP in 2025. So first, it's going to be just talking about his raw metrics. So there is going to be that increase in power. He's a year older. He's going to be stronger. He's had a pretty good taste now, a first full go-around of Major League pitching. So he's going to have more experience. He has 125 games under his belt. So I know that matters, and I know that's still just a blip on the radar as compared to a lot of Major League careers, but I do think that means a lot, having that experience. He has that confidence, and I really do believe how there is positive momentum built from just having a lot of good success. But let's talk about these metrics. There is going to be an increase in power because he's above average in the following, and this is according to Baseball Savant. Expected slugging, 471, 86th percentile. Average exit velocity, 91.1, 80 percentile. Hard hit percentage, 83 percentile. So with that, and he also had a pretty high sweet spot percentage and barrel percentage too as well. Those are all signs of a very strong hitter that if he gets to the proper point of contact, it's going to go. He's going to hit the ball hard. And with that production that he put up in the Coliseum, which is not always necessarily plays as a hitter-friendly ballpark by any means, and it gets a little bit worse as the temperatures cool off with those night games. They're going to be in a little bit smaller of a ballpark, but a hotter climate, and a stadium in Sutter Health Park up in Sacramento that is very hitter-friendly. It's been known, I believe it's the Pacific Coast League, has games there, and it's known as a hitter-friendly ballpark. Just you can look at those statistics over there too as well. So we'll see how much, and I know they've made alterations to the stadium, so maybe that's lessened that effect to an extent, because I know, wind path does have a play in that, and I do know depending on the shape of the stadium, it could be affected positively or negatively. So I don't know enough to know if they can actually reduce that or any way, but just wonder. I do think, though, it is inevitable that there will be an uptick in power with guys across the board, I would say, on this roster, especially the guys that are known for hitting with power consistently. And Lawrence Butler is right in the heart of that. He hit 22 home runs in 125 games. He's going to play a few more games. I think he's going to have more confident at-bats, too, as well. I mean, it's very easy to see that he could hit 30-plus, or at least, if we're talking conservatively, you could say 20, 25-plus. But I do see him, potentially getting to that 30-plus range and, really solidify himself in an MVP race. And that brings me to my next point, that I do think with how he ended 2024, I do think I have a strong belief that a positive finish to a season really does carry that momentum into the following season. Your lasting memories on how your season ended on a positive note, well, let's see how Lawrence Butler thought over the last 73 games of 2024. He had a .302 batting average, 20 home runs, 40 extra base hits, a .597 slugging percentage, a .943 OPS. Now, that's not necessarily sustainable over 162, but another similar stretch this year like that, or if he breaks those up into two solid stretches over, let's say a 30-game stretch where he has 15 home runs and another 30-game stretch he has 17, depending on, how it shapes up, or I don't think that math adds up, but you know what I'm trying to say. I think having a sustainable run, every MVP candidate seems to have a really hot month, 2 months, like a really sizzling hot 2 months, and then the rest of the months are mostly above average, I would say. At most, there's one bad month in there because every hitter is human, and the course of 162, it's long and drawn out. So just riding that roller coaster, just seeing if he can have stretch like that in 2025, I do think that will grab the attention of the voters, and that's that's usually going to get you at least a top 6 vote, depending on how your lower months may shape out. But I do think Butler does have that potential. He's still on the young side. He's only 24. Like I mentioned, he's still getting stronger. So he's only going to get better with age, and I don't see why not. You could see how quick the ascension was just within 2024. So you just imagine what he's taking into this offseason and this training, working on the areas that pitchers are going to attack in 2025 and turn those weaknesses into strengths and, increase those strengths to new heights. I mean, the sky's the limit for Lawrence Butler, and I can't see why he can't show a stretch like that where in July and August he looked like a top 5 hitter in baseball, which is crazy to say. I mean, he's up against a lot of competition, but he was on that good of a tear, and it was really relaying to the win column for the A's too as well. So definitely something to keep an eye on and see what kind of start he gets off on. And I think that laying that foundation of getting off to a hot April could really carry along a positive season from there. But even if it does get off to a slow start, I mean, guys like Aaron Judge typically will have a slower April and then really start cooking in May. So can't make or break everything on how your April goes, but I do know a good April could really be a soundboard to a great year. I do know that for sure. Let's get to our next point. He is also a stolen base threat. So, and I do know, and I'm not 100% sure how WAR or wins above replacement are exactly calculated, but I do know stolen bases earned do add significant amounts to the calculation for what a WAR, what your wins above replacement is. I would, last year he was 18 for 18, so he hasn't, and I know the year before that I think he had 3 or 4 stolen bases, so he's never been caught stealing in his career. He has average foot speed, but I do think he's a good base runner. He knows how to steal bases, and again, that is a smaller sample size, and I do think we could see him get into the 20s there. So that's another tick in his belt that, if he can get to the 30-20 club, that could really catapult him, especially if his average is on the higher side too as well. If he can get to that 270, 280 plus range over that course of the season, and with those power numbers, he'll have as good a shot as anyone. And this will relay me to that next point. If you combine all of those numbers, and if the team's relevant too as well, that is another factor that is considered in American League and National League MVP voting. It's really important, in my opinion. I've never talked to any of the voters, so this is just speculation. But I would believe that is factored into the equation. That if a team, especially a team that hasn't had much success over the last several years, and is suddenly catapulted themselves, even if they're in the American League wildcard race, that would be speaking volumes to where this team was even just 2 years ago. So, and I can't imagine that this team would be in that position without Lawrence Butler being one of the main components and one of the main driving forces. So I do think that matters. If this team could get off to a good start or hang afloat in a division that really has a lot of question marks up and down, I do think that can really help his case too as well, because if he's adding to the team's success and he's adding wins with his production, that's going to matter, because it is, again, it's supposed to be most valuable. It's not necessary. It's not the most outstanding award always. So I do think Lawrence Butler is one of the more important pieces to potential playoff contending teams. And obviously he's got a counterpart in Brent Rooker, who did receive MVP votes last year, which could factor into that, but there is nothing against voting against multiple guys. That's been done plenty of times over the history of baseball. So those are our main reasons why we think Butler can win the MVP. Let's just speak against it and why we don't think it's possible that he can win the MVP. Now, even when we say this, we're in, at the end of the day, this is a hypothetical situation, right? And we know he's not close to the top of being a favorite to win the American League MVP, and that's fine. Obviously, it's something that's earned throughout the season, and really the stats that you put out there and your team's relevancy, all of that is going to matter. But we know, one of our first reason reasons against why he wouldn't win the MVP. He is a young hitter. Like I mentioned, he is only 24 years old. There is always, when these guys are young, it would be his technical sophomore year and his second full season. There's potential for some regression because there is more tape out there. So, like I mentioned on Butler's side for the reasons for, there is a lot of tape out there on some of his areas of his game that he can work on. So like I mentioned, he does struggle at times with recognizing and adapting to all speed and making consistent contact on that. So I'm sure that's something him and whoever he trains with in the offseason, they're going to be making that a point of emphasis so he can limit that weakness as much as he can. Because we know how he can hammer a high velocity fastball better than or hang with any of them in the game. We saw what he did this past spring when he hammered a 99-mile-an-hour fastball from Hunter Green to dead center. So if that doesn't scream high-velocity ball hitter, I don't know what does. But now, knowing this, and Butler knows this, the pitchers that are going to face him know this too as well. And they know this about every guy they're going to face in the upcoming season. So that's something where they may pitch to that weakness more, and baseball's all about a game of adjustments. So if he can stay consistent and make those adjustments and not struggle in those situations as much, be more consistent across the board, I do think there is that possibility. So we will see what that looks like for 2025. But if it's the season's, if spring training translates to spring training, we're going to be in for a fun year. And I think he's really, if you don't know the name, I think Butler's going to get a lot of people's radars. So we'll just have to stay tuned for that. Let's get to the next reason against the MVP case. So his defense is good. It is. It's not a liability in any way, but could still improve with route efficiency and arm strength. Like we said, he does have average foot speed, so and maybe he has increased that as a point of emphasis in this offseason too as well, because like I mentioned, 18 for 18, so he can run. But I'm just saying, like, I do know a lower defensive WAR can keep the overall WAR number down. That's just something I saw with the calculation of WAR. Again, I don't totally understand how that's calculated, but those are just some main takeaways I took. So another reason we can move on. Don't want to dwell too much on the negatives because this is going to be a positive piece, and I do think he is going to be an MVP candidate someday. I don't necessarily think it will be this year, but could see that in his future for sure. But we are in the portion here. This will be final reason against. It is crowded at the top of the AL MVP race. So, the likely candidates are going to be Aaron Judge from the Yankees, Bobby Witt Jr. from the Royals, Gunnar Henderson from the Orioles, Jose Ramirez from Cleveland, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. from Toronto, and his own teammate will be in the race probably too as well, Brett Rooker. So a lot of competition there, but I think he can swing with the best of them up there. So, it's not 100% ruling out, but just know that the competition's stiff, and it's not going to be an easy feat to accomplish. And, those guys are still competing at the very heights of their game. So definitely will be a tough race. So my overall thoughts, and I started alluding to it right before my last reason, but I don't believe he will win the American League MVP in 2025, but that's no slight. I do think he is going to be an all-star this year. I do think he is going to have an excellent 2025. My main reasons is, like I said, I think the competition he's stacked up against, like, Aaron Judge is, I think, going to have another elite season. Bobby Witt Jr. is too as well, and Gunnar Henderson. Hey, I think if Lawrence Butler can outpace these guys, I'd love to see it for sure. I do think he has that potential in him. I don't know necessarily if it's going to come into fruition because, again, he is such a young hitter, so there is still going to be some growing pains along the way. Because if it was always smooth for everyone, we wouldn't know the struggle of some of these guys, and I don't think success in baseball would be as satisfying. So, there's going to be some regression, I think, naturally, and that happens with every hitter, especially young in their career. But I don't think it's going to be anything drastic. I do, like I said, I think he has the potential to hit 30-plus home runs, hit 270-plus, and be a very productive player. Just want to see what his defensive development's going to look like, how many bags he can swipe. But I think he's going to be an exciting player to watch, and this is going to be an exciting team to watch. And I think he's going to be a big reason why this A's team is relevant, and I do think he'll get some recognition. So my thoughts, I do think he'll be a top 10 finish in AL MVP voting, where 6 or 7 maybe, let's call it there, maybe 8, somewhere in that range, 6 to 8, let's call it. I do think he'll get some votes this year. I do think he's going to have a good year. I just don't think 2025 will be the year it'll happen. Just wanted to have a fun little hypothetical there and see what our the conclusion of our discussion got to, but we just wanted to look at it from both sides as to why he could and why he couldn't. And hey, I mean, definitely wouldn't have bet against him if he does it. Definitely won't be surprised, and certainly will congratulate him right here on A's Day. And with that is an episode, another edition of A's Day complete. We talked about the case of why and why not for Lawrence Butler's 2025 AL MVP candidacy and our thoughts on what the outlook would look like. Again, you can find all of our social media updates, all of our content on the following channels. So on Instagram, at A's Day Baseball Podcast, on X, formerly known as Twitter, at A's Day Baseball, our YouTube channel, at A's Day Podcast, and please go ahead and subscribe on our Patreon site, patreon.com/A's Day for just $2 a month. You'll be entered to win monthly A's Day t-shirt giveaways, A's autographed memorabilia, A's future A's ticket giveaways, and so much more as we all grow this platform together. Thank you for taking part of your Monday to listen to us. Our next episode, aside from our A's player profile and prediction episodes, which are going to keep coming out all the way between now and opening day. On Friday, though, we're going to just talk about, as we're starting to see some guys get announced as being on the A's opening day roster. Shout out Noah Murdoch. Congratulations. He was a Rule 5 pick that ended up having a great spring with that nasty sinker. So excited. His A's player profile prediction will be out, I believe, this week. Yes, I believe this week. And we'll get into that. But just wanted to shout him now. It's a cool story. Can't wait to get into that. And see what his role will be in the bullpen. So we'll talk about the bullpen construction because we have a pretty good idea what the rotation and the lineup is going to look like. There's some question marks for the bullpen. So by Friday, we should have a good idea of who's going to be breaking camp with the team, aside for maybe one or two guys like that last-minute battle. But I'd say by end of week, should have a pretty good idea. So stay tuned for that. That's what our discussion will be. And if any breaking news does happen about the A's, we'll be sure to include it on Friday's show. Thank you again. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Holy Toledo, baseball's only 10 days away. Take care.